And welcome back here to Open. Justice League NYC is an initiative of the Gathering for Justice, who is a rapid response criminal justice task force on urgent racial justice issues. They recently held a march called the March for Stolen Lives and Looted Dreams. Joining us now to talk more about it is activist and member of the Justice League, Keris Love. And Keris, good to have you here on Open.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you. Well, I know it's coming off a hot weekend, and most people are still talking about the protests that are held nationwide in regards to the death of George Floyd. But of course, when we talk about the death of George Floyd, it's not just George Floyd in Minneapolis, it's a far greater number.
Absolutely. I mean, we have George Floyd's that happened throughout our history since the enslaved Africans were brought here. And what we're seeing is just a combination of things. We're seeing, we're still in a pandemic. We can't forget that. So we're still in this pandemic where it's been reported that African Americans are more susceptible to the virus because of underlying health conditions. And a lot of us have been in quarantine. And then we had these series of weeks of just seeing black body after black body after black body being murdered on screen. And I think when you look at it from a mental health standpoint, it's too much. And rage starts to boil over. Luckily, we've been always doing this work and this organizing. And so we're able to give people an outlet to put that agitation into demanding policies that create change.
For people who aren't familiar with the Justice League NYC, please tell us a little bit about your organization.
So we are a task force, part of the Gathering for Justice. The Gathering for Justice was founded by Mr. Harry Belafonte, and this is where this intergenerational movement comes in because we do stand on the shoulders of our elders. Carmen Perez is our executive director, and she founded the Justice League NYC. And so the Gathering for Justice, we are rooted in Kingian nonviolence. It was the ideology that Dr. King used, which is somewhat different from what people are saying peaceful is. And Mr. B started the Gathering for Justice because he saw a video of a 5-year-old Black girl being handcuffed in the schools, and he called all the elders, all the young people together and was like, what's happening? What are we doing? And so we're carrying that legacy. We're carrying that torch to end the war on children, to end the war on Black children. And that includes ending mass incarceration, defunding police, et cetera.
Right. And when we talk about defunding police and change into policy and looking for reform with laws, one of the things that's out right now is Governor Cuomo's new legislation. From what you've seen, what you've heard, what are your thoughts about this legislation that's really geared towards reform? One of those pieces talks about the calls, that if you make a call and you're saying that this Black person is doing that or this race related call, and it turns out to be false, that there's going to be imprisonment possibly as associated with that.
Yeah, well, so that's nice, Governor Cuomo, but I want to point out that the push for reform is not new. We are part of a coalition of a lot of criminal justice reform organizations, and we've been pushing something called Repeal 50A, which is the Secrecy Act, and we've been pushing that for years. They had a opportunity during budget session in 2019 to get it passed. We had these historic bail reforms that were won in 2019, and they were all rolled back in 2020. And so Governor Cuomo has had the opportunity to have major reforms underneath his administration, and he has not. So I'm hopeful, maybe the pressure, the people power pressure that we're putting is leading to him understanding that the people are tired. Really, there's no justice. There will be no peace. And these are reforms that we've been fighting for. He didn't just decide today it was a good thing. One thing about politicians is when they start to see their state, their city erupt, they feel like they have to respond. And so that might be what we're seeing, but it's not new. He could have passed these reforms as we've been talking about them for years.
Right. And just to make our viewers aware, 50A is a legislation the governor has on tap as part of his reform. We'll see whether or not that goes forward or not. But I do know what's going forward for you guys, and that is the March for Stolen Lives and Looted Dreams. Share with us a little bit about this upcoming march and the intended impact you want to have.
Yeah, even the messaging around stolen lives and looted dreams, we were very intentional on picking messaging and what to call the march because if you look at Black people in America, our lives were stolen. This land was stolen. America was built on looting labor, looting resources. And so we wanted to make that connection that this is a historic march. We're very intentional in connecting our elders, making sure that we're blessing the land that we're about to march on from indigenous members of the Taino nations. We're very we make sure we have our elders there, folks from the Black Panther Party, elders from Black Panther and Young Lords together, united, showing that unity. And our demands is really what's at the meat of this, which is repeal 50A, the chokehold bill. So we have these demands that are some city, the chokehold bill is at the city level, something like repeal 50A is at the state, defunding police at the city level, moving funds from the police department to youth and community activities. And we really want to focus on these demands. So the demands are on our t-shirts. Demands are on our palm cards as we're marching. So the crowd is wearing t-shirts with our demands on the back because that is what we want to focus to. If we do not change the system structurally, then liberation for Black people won't happen. And we want elected officials to know if you're not going to use your power of writing legislation to rewrite these structural racist laws, then that means that we have to take another step. We might not need you in office. We need somebody else in office. So it's a full circle march of bringing all these things together.
Yeah. And when you talk about 50A here in New York, it is on a state level. Some people are looking at it at a city level, but obviously I know part of what you want to see is it occur on a national level and getting that national sign off on that. I want to talk to you a little bit about support and allies, right?
Okay.
When we're looking at what's going on, the Black Lives Matter movement this weekend was very huge and very impactful. A lot of people will say that, having support from the white community and the Latino community and the Asian and Indian community also joining in. Talk to us about the unity that's been involved in this particular setting when it comes to the protests regarding George Floyd.
Well, I think that what people are noticing, again, I mentioned the pandemic. We had over 30 million people apply for unemployment. Everyone, Black, white, no matter where you're from, East Coast, West Coast. We did not see a lot of relief come to folks on housing, these stimulus packages where small businesses got left out. And so when you connect what happened in the pandemic to what people saw, what happened to George Floyd, I think we're seeing our allies really understand no one's free if Black people aren't free. And so if we are not free, those of us who are descendants from the folks who built this country on their backs, no one's going to be free. And that's why I think we're seeing all of the solidarity. I mean, we have to be free together. We can't just be in our bubbles anymore and say, well, I'm okay. There are people on unemployment that didn't think that they would be part of that demographic, but then the pandemic hit and they realized that their housing is insecure and all these things are insecure. So it could happen to anyone. But I will say that one thing that we did at our march, which was very powerful, is our executive director, Carmen Perez. She called for all the Black women to come to the front of the stage next to Tamika and asked in the crowd all of the Black people to raise their fists. And if you were white and non-Black person of color, do not put your fist up. And then she asked the allies, look to your left and look to your right. These are the people you need to protect. I want you to protect these people. These are the folks who need the Black people who have their fist up. And it's not it's not, a division. It really centered the lives and the voices of Black people, because we are the ones who continue to keep seeing our brothers and sisters murdered by the hands of the state.
Yeah. Well, Keris, we got to leave it there, but thank you so much for sharing with us a little bit about the Justice League and, of course, the March of Stolen Lives and Looted Dreams. Thank you so much for being with us here on Open.
Thank you so much for having me.
All righty. Well, we encourage you to stay with us. We do have more show coming up. We'll be right back in a few, right after this.